the tech came running into my office and said, with a panic look on his face, and he goes, the upgrade crashed, and it looks like the email database has disappeared. I got down on the floor in the server room, concrete floor, cold, and I prayed as hard as I'd ever prayed before because I knew this was probably the end of my business, that I had spent so much time and so much energy, so much sacrifice to get it to this point.
All right, Philip, last episode we were talking about crises, external crises, and how you becoming that problem solver was one way to grow your business.
Let me interrupt
Okay.
you.
Okay.
True, those types of crises that come from outside, exterior things that we did not cause, no fault of our own, and we're able to come in and fix them, that was a great opportunity. But I want to tell you about a crisis that didn't come external. It came from internal. In fact, it came so internal, it came from me. A
Ooh.
crisis that I caused. It could have been fatal to the business. It
Oh,
very likely could have been fatal to the business. And it's not something I really enjoy talking about,
of course.
not really proud about it, but it's real. And it's part of the fabric of 26 years. So I feel like I need to talk about it because it's part of the experience. But before I tell you what the crisis is, I'm going to fast forward probably 15 years past that crisis. So, spoiler alert, I made it past the crisis.
Okay.
15 years later, we're in really just a few years before I sold the business. So, business is booming. We're doing great. We've hired more people than we've ever hired. And one of our clients had brought us into a case, a legal case, where we were responsible for we had an enormous responsibility of capturing data, of processing data, making that data available to attorneys, to investigators, to FBI, to you name it. And we
Okay.
were the focal point of that. And when we were called upon to take on that project, there were many other companies that were more legitimate, more capitalized, better equipped to do it than we were. But yet our client had been a long-standing client, chose us and hired us to be in that position. It was an incredible opportunity for us, and we took advantage and rode that all the way out to selling the business. So I am on site at a particular company that we were capturing a lot of data and doing a lot of crisis management, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And one of the senior attorneys on the case, very senior attorney that I rarely had any dealings with, he was that senior, in a room with a bunch of other individuals, executives and so on, and I was just like a little rat in there. And he said, and he had this big, he was a very intimidating person, had this big booming voice. He goes, "Philip, yeah, when we hired you guys to do this project, it was probably against my better judgment. But you've proved me wrong, young man. Y'all have done a great
Oh,
job." When he
wow.
said that, number one, my heart swelled because getting a compliment from this individual, I didn't even know if he knew particularly who I was. It meant the world to me. But immediately my mind flashed back to 15 years prior.
Hmm.
And this was the situation. That firm, that attorney was a client of mine back 15 years before.
Yeah.
And we were a smaller company. I had 2 employees at the time and myself. And we were getting ready to do an upgrade for this law firm on their email server. Now, I'll put a caveat here. Back in that particular time frame, email was important, but it was not as mission critical as email is today. If your email is down 5 minutes today, it's like, oh my goodness, I can't operate. It was back in those days, not so much, but it was very important because now attorneys were beginning to communicate via email with their clients, send documents back and forth. So it
Sure.
was a way of transacting business. And so being in IT, any kind of upgrade work you do after hours. You just know that. And so we were set to do an upgrade. And I say we, myself, and I had two techs that I'd hired, and we all had jobs to do on this. And we were upgrading the email server. And so what happened, one of the techs, one of my techs, was his responsibility was actually to start the process of actually upgrading from this server over here. Okay. And so we're doing this late at night while nobody's in the office, and something happened.
Mm.
Don't know. Something happened and it failed. And the tech came running into my office and said, with a panic look on his face, and he goes, the upgrade crashed and it looks like the email database has disappeared. And I'm like, what? It's like, there's something, you missed something. That's crazy. So I go rushing into the server room. We look at it, and sure enough, there's a telltale sign when a file, when you're talking about a computer file or a database
Okay.
file, has nothing in it. I'm going to give you a
Okay.
little technical detail here, Kent. You ready? Write this
Okay.
down.
All right.
If
All
you
right.
look and you look at the detail listing on that and it says file size 0, that means there's nothing in it. The file size on this firm's entire email database had a big fat 0 out at the end. So my heart
Ooh.
just dropped into my stomach. And then I was like, oh, wait, okay. I panicked too soon. Remember, in times of crisis, I want to be a stabilizing force. So I'm like, hey,
Right.
no worries. Just get the backup and we'll start it again. He goes, backup. I'm like, yeah, you did back up the database before you started the upgrade, correct? Well, no, because the instructions didn't have, it just said it would automatically. So there I am, and I had a meltdown. I was not a stabilizing force. I was an unstabilizing force because at that time, my client that was responsible for the biggest share of my revenue, I was looking and staring at a computer screen where their email database, including the emails from every attorney, every legal assistant, every paralegal in the firm, was gone.
Oh, cool.
So I panicked.
Of course.
There's no doubt about it. I Before, I gave up, I tried everything. We looked for backups. Maybe it backed it up on its own. I, we spent hours trying to fix it. There's no fix. And when I realized that I had to pull myself together because I was not happy, I don't anger very easily. It's just as a person. So I'm a great person to work for because I generally am just super Mr. Nice Guy to a fault. But apparently I was not that night. And so one of my guys, he was trying to screw in a hard drive into a computer or something. And I noticed his hand as he was screwing, his hand was shaking. And I'm like, Jim, what's wrong? He goes, I've never seen you like this. He- I scared, and this is like a former army guy, scared
Right.
him to death. Little old me scared him to death.
Right.
And I said, guys, don't worry about it. Going home. I'll take care of this. I realized then I had to take the pressure off of them. I'd gotten everything out of them I was going to get. No
Mhm.
sense in creating a crisis
Right.
for them anymore. I had to send them home. It was about midnight, and I had to deal with what the consequences were going to be. And I had to own up to it. Well, I'm going to throw my guy under the bus. I didn't, I should have told him to back that up. That should have been in my instructions, and I didn't do it. That was my fault. Wasn't his fault. He should have known to back it up, but I should have told him. And
Sure.
so I sent the guys home. And I said, come back in the morning. I need y'all fresh in the morning. We'll have to deal with this. And then after everybody left, I got down on the floor in the server room, concrete floor, cold air in there. And I prayed as hard as I'd ever prayed before because I knew this was probably the end of my business, that I had spent so much time and so much energy, so much sacrifice to get it to this point. This is early on still in the scheme of things. However, it had been at least 6, 7 years of
Right.
sacrifice and pouring my heart and soul into it. And I knew this it at morning light, I had to own up to what had happened, and that was probably it. And so I was already in my mind writing out a resignation letter and so on. But I thought, you know what? In times of crisis, that's when God comes on the scene, right? The storm's
Right. Right.
howling, and he stands out on the bow of
Right.
the ship and says, "Peace be still." So I remembered that.
Right.
So I
Right.
got down
Right.
on the floor, and I lie not, nobody's there in this office building in downtown Nashville, and I'm beating the floor and I'm saying, "God, I've done everything I know to do. Please help me. My intentions here." I just I made a logical
Right.
presentation to the Lord. And I would just no lie, I would get up after I prayed a while and I would look at the screen and I still saw the big fat 0. And I'd
Of
get back and
course.
I'd scream and I'd cry and I'd pray some more and I'd get up and look still. And I said, then if you don't fix the file magically, then give me the knowledge of how I can get this back. And I don't know how long I was there, but it was a long time. And that was another where is God moment because he sure didn't reveal himself to me that night.
Right.
I didn't get an answer. The file didn't miraculously recover. And in my mind, it was over. And so
Yes.
what I had to do was number one, I could not shift blame. I couldn't say, oh, my guy did it, try to look good.
Right.
I had to take
Right.
responsibility and I had to own up to it. I had to be honest. And so I had a script in my head. Here's what I'm going to do as early as I can call my main contact at the firm and just tell them what happened. And so I did. So as soon as I thought this guy was up, I gave him a call and I said, "Hey, sit down. I got to talk to you." And I told him exactly what happened. And I said, "Look, I realize you probably don't want me around anymore, and that's fine. And I'll pack up as soon as you want me to, but I will do everything in my power to help you guys recover, and then I'll leave." He said, "Help us." So thankfully, did you ever carry a BlackBerry? Remember the little BlackBerry
I,
devices?
I do. I do.
Okay.
I didn't have one, but I know what you're talking about.
Back in the day, the attorneys love those things because they could take them into court and they get little notifications. And so most of the attorneys in this firm had BlackBerry devices. So it wasn't until the next morning after I talked to the attorney at the firm and told him what had happened. He didn't yell, he didn't do anything. He just said, help us get what we can." I happen to
Right.
remember that these BlackBerry devices back up emails to a on each individual hard drive.
Oh, wow.
And so myself and that attorney went to every computer in that firm, physically pulled that backup file and restored those emails to the new server. We
Oh,
recovered. I had not slept the night before, so I'm working
of
on fumes
course.
at that point in
Of
time.
course. Yeah.
But I recovered virtually at least all of the important emails that they needed,
Okay. Yep.
and they kept me on. Now, here's what happened. Number 1, brutal honesty, even though it was very painful, and it probably in my mind, it meant I'm out of a job. They saw
Sure.
that. Number 2, I went above and beyond, losing sleep, working obscene hours to help them recover, and tried to be relatively pleasant in the process, realizing what I had done.
Of
I was
course.
able to recover virtually all the emails by the end of the day, and we were able to get them up and going. So that's what flashed through my mind when that man who was the senior partner in that firm 15 years prior had
Wow.
seen my I didn't feel like it was grace, but in hindsight, it was grace under pressure, grace in crisis, trying to fix it when I felt like God had failed me or God was just not answering the phone. God gave me a grace and an ability to work through the storm and work through the crisis in a way that gained me credibility in that firm that I could not have gotten any other way. 15 years later, when they were handed one of the biggest cases that firm had ever seen, they gave me the responsibility of housing, collecting, and processing all the data for that. Never would have happened if I'd not had the crisis on the floor in the server room 15 years earlier.
Wow.
Those are
Wow.
things you don't realize until many years down the road. When I called that attorney that next morning, I did not know the import of that on my future and my business until 15 years later. And God brought it to my mind when that man said, "We hired you against my better judgment. You've proved me wrong, Phillip Hampton." A backhanded comment at that, compliment at that, but it reminded me, you know what? You built some trust with that firm with your honesty and with your
Right.
diligence and grace under fire.
Right.
And that got me to a position that I was able to sell my company beyond my wildest dreams. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jesus. He didn't
Right.
answer my prayer that night and miraculously restore that file because
Yeah.
I needed some sweat equity with that firm that was going to pay dividends many years down the road.
Do you remember the eureka moment with the blackberries? What was it, the lawyer or you or
The lawyer mentioned it. He was a technology guy, so he knew
okay.
technology. He also was the one that had a BlackBerry, and,
Yeah.
occasionally, if I was not there and someone had a problem, they would call this lawyer because he was the only tech,
Sure.
uh, uh,
Background techie.
enabled, and so he said, immediately, and he was a good lawyer, and that's what he does. Lawyers do a lot of times crisis management, and so that's the first thing he said. Like I was like, "I'm ready to quit. I'm out of
Of
here. I know,
course.
beat me.
Of course.
Here's my back.
Right,
Put the
right,
stripes on
right,
my
right,
back.
right.
Yeah, beat me."
Right.
And he, to his credit, was like, "Hey, wait, I think there's a way. We have these blackberries, and I think they back up to our." And I'm like, "Oh my word, you're right. You're right."
Right.
And so, he jumped in there. He's become a great friend to this day. I am great friends with this guy because we have kindred spirits of wanting to fix things and solving problems and crises.
Right. The Lord answered your prayer through someone else
Yes.
after you fell on your sword,
Yes.
honestly.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not
Yeah.
tied to your emotions and your fatigue and everything
Yeah.
were probably in every direction. But yeah, we want the miracle, the magic, let the file size rebuild.
I was putting my
And
faith on that. I
of course, of course. No,
Can
that's just
God do
human.
that?
That's
Yes,
just
God can do that. Yes,
that's
God
okay.
can do it. But he
If
doesn't
yes,
always answer the way we want him to. And
right,
there's a reason because he sees the bigger picture.
right.
But yeah,
And
that was a tough 48 hours.
I'm sure when you finally went to bed, you didn't wake up
I
for
wish to say that was the only all-nighter that I pulled, as a business owner, but sadly, no.
that was maybe just the worst.
Most of the time, they were
Yeah,
productive. They were just tiresome.
that's
This
right,
one
right,
was
right.
tiresome and non-productive. Really non-productive is being too kind. It was destructive.
The destructive, right. No, no emotions remaining at all.
Yeah.
The crisis we create.
Yeah.
And then but God's still there and we still have to keep our integrity, which ugh, that's so hard.
Yeah,
Honesty is
and
the last thing you want to be.
your integrity and your poise. Your integrity
Mm,
and your poise. And that's one thing I stressed, particularly as I started getting people into management. When I started looking for people in management in my company, you look for people that aren't gonna freak out when things go bad. You want people that have a level head and people that can unfortunately, I didn't initially that night. I kinda had a meltdown,
Well,
but I had to
right,
pull it
right,
together. You gotta pull it together. You gotta pull it
right,
together.
right. Understandable.
Important important part of business building.
Right. That's a great story, both on what you face, but also on how we can all apply it in spite, because life never goes exactly like you expect.
Never, never.
Thank you for
It's
sharing that.
applicable
That
in,
was
other things, just
oh
business, of
yeah,
course.
yeah,
So,
faith, all those things. Yeah, crises happen, and dealing with that. Thank you for sharing that, Phil.